The status of Native Americans in the United States. This project was completed for our Diversity in America class, and it was completed by Jared Ritter, Sabrina Sweet, and Justin Dill. The reason that we decided to use this topic is because there's a lot of Native American influence in our community, so we thought it'd be interesting to learn a little bit more about their culture and their history and all the things that they've been through, just so we have a better understanding of it. Stereotypes of Native Americans. In mainstream media, Native Americans are depicted as lazy, fat, alcoholics, or drug addicts. Some other things in mainstream media that Native Americans have dealt with is professional athletic teams using their logos and mascots which could be seen as stereotypical. So to debunk these stereotypes, the laziness and uneducated one, 77% of Native Americans actually have a high school degree. The percentage of Native Americans with a bachelor's degree has doubled within the last 10 years. And a lot of people think that they get special treatment and special grants to go to college. Well, it's actually the United States fulfilling a legal contract in exchange for the secession of their land. And you think many Native Americans live on reservations, only 22% of them actually do. Government relations with the United States. In the 1800s, Native Americans were forced to settle on reservations by the federal government. The U.S. Department of Indian Affairs was established in 1824, and it provides services directly or through contracts and grants. Native Americans had the right to create and enforce their own laws, change taxes, control their land, and regulate their own activities. Tribes that are federally recognized maintain a legal relationship to the United States government through binding treaties, acts of Congress, and executive orders. Speaking of the government, the U.S. government was not the first government to institute democratic rule. Tribal governments are the oldest governments in existence in the Western Hemisphere. The Dawes Act was implemented between 1887 and 1933, and that was to assimilate as many Native Americans as possible and throw them into our culture and make them be like us. So John Collier and the Indian New Deal. The 1924 Citizenship Act granted U.S. citizenship to all Native Americans who acquired it. Now that these Native Americans were given citizenship, they were not restricted to living on reservations. They could move wherever they wanted to. Speaking of reservations, the Indian Appropriations Act of 1851 created Indian reservations and forced them to live on those reservations. The U.S. government made many promises to the Native Americans but never followed through with them. Native Americans were promised food, supplies, shelter, and many other things, but they never received them. Reservations only account for 2% of the total land of the United States. There's only 326 total Indian reservations in the United States, which is a very small portion of the land in the United States. Now let's talk a little bit about Westernization. The driving force behind Westernization was Manifest Destiny. Manifest Destiny is where the United States wanted to conquer as much land as they possibly could to keep growing. This caused the Indian Removal Act to happen, which was put in place by Andrew Jackson. It was put into place May 28th of 1830, and it forced Native Americans off their land. This caused the Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears was a path that Native Americans had to march towards their reservations, which ended up killing mass amounts of Native Americans. Red Cloud was a very prominent member of the Lakota tribe. He was so memorable that there was a school named after him, and it was called Red Cloud Indian School, and it was located in South Dakota on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. One of his memorable quotes was, "They made us many promises, more than I can remember, but they never kept one. Except they promised to take our land, and they took it." Native American reservations and crime go hand in hand. Native American reservations across the United States have grappled for years with chronic rates of crime higher than all but a handful of the nation's most violent cities. The Justice Department files charges only about half of the Native American country murder investigations and turns down nearly two-thirds of sexual assault cases. The country's 310 Native American reservations have violent crime rates that are more than 2.5 times higher than the national average. Native American women are 10 times more likely to be murdered than other Americans and 4 times more likely than the national average to be raped or sexually assaulted. Under federal law, tribal courts have the authority to prosecute tribal members for crimes committed on reservations, but they cannot sentence those convicted to more than 3 years in prison. As a result, tribes usually seek federal prosecution for serious crimes. On Native American reservations, you'll find lots of substance abuse. This graph shows that Native American teenagers and children generally start using drugs, alcohol, and other types of substances well before the average of the United States. So they're getting started earlier, which is causing addiction problems and other stuff like that, which is one of the reasons that there are so many problems on Native American reservations.